Hey guys, my name is Matthew, and today we're talking about the 5 things that British people tend to think are uniquely British, but actually they aren't. Here we go. So this video is paired off with a video that I made last week about 5 things that Americans think are uniquely American, but they aren't. That video is largely based on my own personal story and things that I've actually believed and people I talk to and things that they actually believe. This week is a little bit different because I'm obviously not British, so I can't speak into those things perfectly, but these come from the time I spent living in the UK, traveling around the UK for nearly a year, and a lot of the conversations and the things that I heard. These 5 things are things that I heard often from people in various forms, and the strong idea that I got from them was this is part of our national identity. One thing I wanted to mention before I got into it was a comment I got on the video last week from a guy named Richard Greenwood. He said, I assume it's a guy actually, maybe I shouldn't assume his gender, but it says, everything you mentioned is definitely not uniquely American, but I think you may be able to use the identical script for the forthcoming Not Uniquely British video too. And I think that may be true. It's possible that those exact same things actually apply to a lot of different countries. It may be that a lot of different countries actually have these same kind of ideas embedded into themselves, especially these ones about how my country is the best. But these 5 things are just things that I noticed that British people seem to take on as part of their national identity. And these are things that are just not necessarily uniquely British. Here we go. The first one is one that I heard over and over again all the time. Apparently British people love standing in queue. And that's like a national pastime, and British people hate it when you not cut in line. They hate it when you jump the queue. And it's such an interesting idea because I don't know if you know or not, but everyone in the world, like all of civilized society, they all stand in lines. In the United States, we do that from a very young age, from like primary school. We're taught to stand in lines. We're taught that that's the way we travel around from different classroom to classroom and things like that. Is in queues, is in lines. There's actually this really interesting study that I ran across. I couldn't find it. I'm very confident I saw it at one point in time. Maybe someone else can find it. This was done by an American university. I'm pretty sure it was Harvard. They did the study about, they put 6 people in a line and there was no signage saying what the line was for. And they had people from the general public join the line in the United States because actually everywhere you go, like lines are what people do. And if there's a line, they assume that there's something good at the front of the line. No one likes cutting in line either. Again, that's something we learned really early in elementary school or primary school, that nobody likes cutting in line. It's not very much fun. We had all these different things where you cut me and then I'll cut you back, and it's like, or back cuts or whatever, but we stopped doing those things because they're not very much fun. No one likes being cut in line. No one likes it when people jump the queue. So this is certainly not a uniquely British thing. It's I think, like I said, all of civilized society, as far as I know, stands in line or queues, and that's a very common thing. So I'm not sure where this idea comes from that it's uniquely British. Someone can maybe let me know in the comments. All right, here's a second one that I want to talk about that's kind of similar, is the idea British people think that they're very, very polite. And the way that this comes out is they say sorry a lot, or they apologize a lot. Obviously, I did run into this occasionally in England where someone bumped into me and they said sorry, but that's actually something that happens everywhere. Again, at least in the United States, everywhere I've been, people say sorry when they bump into you. One thing that I heard about in British culture, and this is part of the identity, is actually if you bump into me, maybe I should say sorry. And I think it's really funny that British people think, I've heard some people say that they're actually the best at saying sorry. But I'd actually never even heard of British people being good at saying sorry until I came to the UK. So the cultures that I have always heard are the best at saying sorry are like Canadians and Japanese people. They're both well known for saying sorry a lot, but I actually said sorry a little bit like a Canadian there for sorry. They say sorry a lot, and that's what they're like known for, but I'd never even heard of British people saying sorry a lot until like I said, until I came to the UK. Also, I will say, in the United States, I think people are actually kinder in supermarkets or grocery stores or whatever you want to call them than they are in the UK. In the UK, it's like this weird free-for-all, and people are not polite, and they don't say sorry, And I was really surprised by it when I heard your reputation for saying sorry, and then you go into a grocery store and everyone is very not polite in there. So maybe I just don't understand, again, any of these pieces. If you have something to add, please comment below and let me know what I'm missing. But I'm not sure why British people think that saying sorry is a uniquely British idea or is uniquely part of your identity. The next one is an interesting one because it's actually a major complaint I heard from British people in general, is when Americans talk about a British accent, like as if you guys have one single accent in all of the UK. And that totally makes sense. I'm totally on board for being upset about that because there are so many different accents. We've talked about how there are many different accents, and you can sometimes travel 100 miles and find a totally different accent than you were, or even less than that potentially. Just the next town over might have a little bit different accent than the accent that you were just listening to. What's very interesting about this, though, is a lot of people that I've talked to don't consider that that's also true for other places, specifically the United States. I've heard actually several times from individuals who will complain about this very thing, but maybe in the next conversation I have with them, we'll talk about how great their American accent is. It's such a silly idea because Americans also have lots and lots of different accents. The difference between Southern accents, actually, and Southern accent is also a misnomer because there are so many different Southern accents as well. Like a Texas accent is so different than a Georgian accent, it's different than Tennessee. And that's different from New York, and that's different from California. And so normally what I hear when someone in the UK does an American accent is like something very New York or something very California. They miss that there's a whole bunch of states in between. And so obviously the UK has lots and lots of accents. That's great, and it's wonderful to have that as part of your identity. But somehow it's missed that that's not a uniquely British thing. Actually, whatever your American accent is probably terrible, and it probably doesn't sound like an American at all. Maybe it is. Maybe you've been working on it, you've perfected it, you spent lots of time around an American. But an American accent is just as much a misnomer as a British accent would be. Here's another one. I hear it all the time from British people. In fact, if you go back to any video I ever made about the weather, you will see inklings of this all over the place. British identity is somehow tied up with the idea that the UK has weather but not climate, and people tend to think that their weather changes so rapidly, like, oh, it changes one day over the next, and it's just very, very different. First of all, I think that's funny because weather in the UK is actually some of the most consistent weather I've ever experienced. Day over day, hour over hour, and week over week, it actually changes very slowly in my experience. Of course, I was only there for 1 year, so maybe this is just totally wrong. Even if that part is wrong, which I don't think it is, I'll give you a couple anecdotes about weather experiences I've had in other places. But weather changing very rapidly and weather people not being able to predict the weather and all of these different things is literally something that every place I've ever lived thinks is uniquely their thing. For instance, when I lived in Texas, people used to say, yeah, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes because it'll change. That's like a very common phrase that people use. And when I was in Colorado, when I was a kid, there were several days when I went to school in the morning and it was perfectly fine weather, the sun was shining, and I was sent home later in the day because a blizzard came and was literally snowing us in the same school day, right? If you're traveling across the Midwest, you can frequently run into a tornado, hail, sunshine, rain, and a whole wide variety of temperatures, everything from like 45 degrees and 110 degrees, all within just a few hours of each other. And so weather everywhere changes really, really frequently. But actually, I think the weather in the UK changes less frequently than people in the UK tend to believe. And I think that you actually have climate. I'm not sure where this phrase, I've never heard that particular phrase before, that you have weather, not climate, until I came to the UK. I would say that you guys do have weather, you do have climate, and that weather and that climate are both really changeable no matter where you live. For the most part, there are places that do have consistent weather, but it's hard to predict that weather in most parts of the world, and the UK is certainly not unique in that aspect. The last thing that seems to make up part of British identity, and it seems to be something that British people think is uniquely British, is sarcasm. Now, sarcasm has taken a little bit of a different turn in the United States than it does in the UK. I'll say that you guys do something maybe more like understatement, which is a different form of sarcasm. It's a little bit more muted, it's a little bit less obvious, but sarcasm is certainly not a uniquely British idea either. There are lots of countries and lots of different languages where sarcasm is really prevalent, and it's something that is certainly not uniquely British. Do let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know where I made some mistakes or where you think I was wrong about what British people think. There's obviously huge generalities here. Not every single person thinks every single one of these things, but these are some tendencies that I tended to hear about what British people think are uniquely British, but actually aren't. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We put out new content every single week, and we will see you guys